Welcome back. It's a cold July morning and we are headed towards Khwai. And as you can see, the sun is just creeping up over the horizon. The tar and comfortable road ends at Shirobi, and from here for the next 20 kilometers the road is seriously corrugated all the way up to the veterinary gate. Well, finally, 20 kilometers later, we passed the veterinary gate. No need to stop since we headed northbound and into the red zone. But you do notice that the road slowly gets progressively better and the sightings become more frequent. As you approach Mababi, you'll see a lot more wildlife, and you'll also come across a water crossing. Here's a heads up, don't cross the water crossing. You don't want to end up stuck in the middle of the river. Too many people seem to try it every year. There are a number of detours that go around. There's one that really skirts along the edge, and then there's a big wide one that goes all the way around. It is a bit sandy, the big one, but it is the only one that really works when the water is high. This year the water was low, and so I was able to skirt my way around the edge. But anyway, soon we passed through Mababi and crossed the Khwai River Bridge. That is just on the other side of Mababi, and from this point it is only 37 kilometers to Khwai, a little bit closer to Dead Tree Forest, in which I always want to drop down into. This signpost marks the entrance into the Khwai Community Trust area, and it is situated right by the cut line, the Chobe cut line, which you can drive down. But this is us here dropping down a little bit further into Dead Tree Forest, and this is by the Mokhotlo campsites. As you can see, it was a lot drier than it usually is, and it's going to be interesting because we're coming back here in August, and so look out for that video. But it'll be interesting to see how much drier it is in August, and just to see the difference. But already it was very dry. And here we are, finally arriving at our campsite. Now, I will leave links and all the information about this campsite in the comments or the bio down below. So if you want to come and camp here, you can do that. There are 9 campsites, and it is so beautiful. I really, really love these private campsites along the Khwai River. But yeah, more of that down below. But first, it's time to unpack and get camp set up. With camp set up, it was time to take a quick walk down to the ablutions. And the ablutions here are rustic but clean, and they work. Flush toilets, hot showers, there's nothing more. There's nothing more to want. And there's a nice little outside tap here where you can collect water for washing and cleaning. We stay in Khwai. Camp 3, which is my favorite camp to stay in, favorite site. But obviously, as I mentioned, there are 9 others. A little afternoon nap, and it was time to get up and head out.
Just wait till he passes, then you can come back.
Okay, we're just watching him. He's still on the path.
At 3 o'clock, we set out on our first game drive. And this drive would prove to be a little bit frustrating, to be honest. And that is because of a beautiful leopard sighting that wasn't really a beautiful leopard sighting. It's funny how a bad sighting can sometimes be more frustrating, and sometimes you like almost wish you didn't see it than that you did see it, if that makes any sense. But as usual, a quick drink stop. Uh, it's way too hot at 3 o'clock, and so that's what we did.
That's my number one.
With Khwai being so dry, there were so many elephants around, and it definitely made the trip really special. We had elephants everywhere, from on every drive, early in the mornings, late in the evenings, walking through camp. It was really, really special. Well, this here is our disappointing leopard sighting. Disappointing because of the vehicles that uh, were around this sighting. When we arrived, the only vehicle there was a Land Rover. In fact, I couldn't see the leopard, and it was only the driver of the Land Rover that informed me that on the other side of his vehicle there was a leopard. But because of the way he had parked, there was no way for us to actually see this leopard. And as you can see from these photos, there was nothing to see. In fact, these photos we took by standing up in the back of our vehicle and taking these photos through the Land Rover's windows. And there was plenty of space if the Land Rover had just repositioned himself a little bit, but he didn't. And he didn't move. He had been there for ages. In fact, they were no longer really looking at the leopard. They were busy, editing their photos on their cameras and, on their phones and drinking coffee. They'd been there for some time. And even as you can see, later on, other safari vehicles came. And without having access from the road because of the Land Rover, they decided to, go off road and drive through this thick bush so that they could get a sight of the leopard as well on the other side. But there was only space for one 4x4 at a time. We went away. I came back 30 minutes later. Nothing had changed. The Land Rover was still there. And I just think that we do need to learn a little bit of safari etiquette around sightings. But yeah, let me know if you've had any other disappointing sightings. And what do you think about safari etiquette? Do you think that there are some safari etiquette that we need to really start to establish? Personally, I always think that you really shouldn't have more than 3 vehicles at a sighting. And if you have arrived at a sighting, you had a good sighting, if other vehicles arrive, it's just time to move on. Especially, it's fine if there's a few vehicles, only a few vehicles, but when vehicles start piling up and you're the first person there, it's time to move on. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. This was a beautiful sighting. I think the sunlight and that bull elephant was just really special. But the highlight was the hyena den. I've been checking this den every time I come to Khwai, and often, well, not often, every single time, I've never ever found anything at the hyena den, but I always check it, just hoping. And this time it was great. The hyenas were about, and there was also this tiny little baby hyena as well. This was definitely the highlight, and as you will see, we keep coming back here to the hyena den throughout our trip. Well, with the light fading, we left the hyenas and headed home. But the vehicle soon started losing power, and I realized that there was something going wrong with the engine. We managed, however, to limp home and cook dinner, but I knew that there was something wrong with the vehicle, and so I knew it wasn't going to be an early morning the next morning, but rather I would have to wake up early and do some work on the vehicle. I decided to jack it up that night and just have a look because I thought maybe there was a pipe loose near the fuel tank. But even though there was a bit of a diesel leak there, this turned out not to be the problem. We don't normally sleep late while on safari, but we did today. With the vehicle playing up, we decided to have a gentle morning and then after breakfast have a good look at the vehicle and try and figure out what was going wrong. With lots of extra condensed milk in our coffee that morning, it was time to try and figure out what was going on with the vehicle. I must say the high lift jack came in very handy on this trip, and it is definitely worth taking a little bit of time to work out how to use a high lift jack. Everybody seems to strap them on their vehicles and not really know how to use them, so that's a heads up. It is good to do a little refresher course if you're going to carry one with you. I decided in the end to bypass the lift pump because it seemed that the diaphragm had gone and was sucking in air. And it worked. Cutting a pen in half and joining two pipes together to bypass the lift pump made the vehicle work, and I was very impressed with myself, I must say. But before heading to Khwai to try and acquire a filter so I could fit an inline filter instead of just a pen, it was time for breakfast, and my lovely wife took the lead here in getting that done. And I must say, there's nothing that quite beats bacon and eggs in the bush with some smoky toast. Well, we soon head into Khwai. The vehicle had a few airlocks, which meant we had to stop and bleed the system along the way. But it turned out that 17 spanner and a little bit of bleeding, and we were okay to go. But we did spend most of the day in Khwai, just trying to arrange for my brother and Mr. Paul, the man who owns the campsite where we're staying, to bring in an inline filter, and they also sent out a lift pump for me. So that was great. Here at the Green Tuck Shop, by the way, you will find Mike the mechanic, and he was very helpful. Here he was helping some friendly people who had broken their tow bar on the Savuti Road, and he was also very helpful to us as well, even though we actually didn't use him to help us with anything. But it is useful to know that there's a mechanic there. In fact, there's two mechanics, and I will leave all the information down below. With parts arranged to be sent out, we went home to get a little bit of a sundowner snack. And I must say, leftover steak, a little bit of goat's cheese brie, really perfect with some crackers. So after satisfying ourselves on snacks and gin and tonics, the vehicle working, we decided to head out on a little afternoon game drive. I must say, the vehicle breaking down put a bit of a damper on our mood, but just being out and about and being able to, even watch a giraffe or little birds at the bridge made us feel so much better. And we soon head down to this little sundowner spot, which is the hippo pool, to have a look at them hippos. There are many hippo pools around the Khwai area marked on the map. There's the one that is dry now that I refer to as Austin's hippo pool. But this hippo pool is the one that you find on the right-hand side of the road once you've passed the bridge on your way to Khwai. We soon left the hippo pool and headed off to see if the hyenas were still around at their den. And we did arrive, but when we arrived, there was not one hyena in sight. So we made ourselves comfortable, and fortunately, after a little time, the hyenas started to arrive. I find it very interesting. It seems that the hyenas sometimes go out to scavenge and sniff around, even during the daytime, leaving the den unoccupied. I think maybe there might have been one of the hyenas down in the burrow, but there was definitely the baby hyena in the burrow at this time. The way the hyena den is located, it allows a few more vehicles to comfortably watch the hyenas without really infringing on their space. However, as darkness settled in, we started to head home, and happily, the vehicle behaved itself. And I think it was at this point that we made up our minds that the next morning would be an early start. But first, a quick stop off at the showers to have a quick wash, use the loos, and then head home to cook some nice steak. Another night of steak and potatoes and garlic bread, and then to boil the kettle so that we can put it in the thermos for the next morning's early start. The next morning was freezing cold, and so with the sun just starting to shed some kind of light in the sky, we woke up, started preparing some coffee. I must say, having the thermos with hot water in allows us to make hot coffee and then jump straight in the vehicle and head out. This time we tried some instant kind of packet coffee. We normally make real coffee in the plunge pot, but this time we did just use this instant coffee, and I must say it was okay. Definitely not the same, but we were so determined this morning to try and find ourselves either a leopard or a lion. And I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful morning, but we just couldn't seem to put our fingers on anything. So we decided to head back towards what I keep calling Austin's Hippo Pool, but it's the area between Mohotlo campsites and Khwai, I think Khwai Expeditions campsite. But as you can see here on the map, you go all the way down here, and then there's this junction. Now we actually don't turn down this junction, but that's the most commonly used one. Here, you can't really see it on the map, but there's a little road that follows this like little sand ridge, which we drive in, and then here you come down to what I keep referring to as Austin's Hippo Pool. When we were here now, it was dry, but actually most times it's got water in it with like 1 or 2 hippos in it. But it's a really good area to snoop around looking for wildlife. And so it was to this area to focus in on around these river crossings. There's a number of river crossings around here in this area, as well as some private campsites that they use for mobile safaris. When there's a mobile safari there, they often put a little sign on the road showing that you shouldn't drive down there, but you can still kind of work your way around it. But this is the area where all the river crossings are, and of course that means that a lot of wildlife is congregated around this area. It's a good place to look around for wild dogs, leopards, lions, just because it is that crossing choke point. And so it was in this area that we made our way to try and find those lions or perhaps a leopard. But what a beautiful sunrise. I mean, there's something about getting up early to see the sunrise. And it seemed like we weren't the only ones who had the idea of getting up early. We did pass a few mobile safaris working that area as well.
No.
Sunrise found us at a dried up Austin's Hippo Pool. It's surprising how deep this little pool gets, the fact that hippos can hide in it when it's full of water, but it was quite sad to see it absolutely dry. We soon made our way down to the crossing points. We didn't cross, instead we just snooped around looking, and then decided to stop and get ourselves some real coffee. The problem with instant coffee is, yeah, it's great, it's quick, but it just doesn't have the same impact. Unfortunately, didn't have enough water in our thermos to make our pot of coffee, so had to put the kettle on. But it seemed like such a quiet morning. That was the one thing with this trip. Up until this point, absolutely no sign of any lions. Normally, you come across their footprints, you hear them at night. There's just some sign that they're about. But so far, there had been nothing. I hadn't seen a single track, hadn't heard a single roar in the night. It was very, very quiet. And so I think we just decided at this point to enjoy the scenery and have a little sunrise coffee stop. But what a beautiful, beautiful place to explore. But we soon decided, you know what, time to head home and have some breakfast. With it being so quiet, we decided what we really needed was a good breakfast of bacon and eggs. And so that's what we did. Back to camp. after a good breakfast and a nap, 12 o'clock found us heading back to Khwai. I noticed that the oil in the vehicle was a little bit low, and so I wanted to see if I could buy some engine oil. And you can. We succeeded. We got some engine oil. Ridiculously expensive. But let's face it, if you're going to buy engine oil in Khwai, it is going to be expensive. We also crossed over the bridge to the Moremi Khwai gate. I wanted to know if they had a little map there which showed the sightings. Because it had been so quiet on our side, I was very interested to know if there had been sightings on the other side of the river. Turns out they don't have a sighting board, but talking to the people that side, it turns out it has also been very, very quiet on the other side of the river. So I suppose there's just times when the predators are just really, really quiet, and this was the time. But because we had had a very short morning, we decided to go out in the midday heat and snoop around. At least see if we could find some kind of sign of these predators, some footprints, something. But once again, we did not find any sign that there was even any lions floating around. And so it was back to camp again. Back to camp to have a shower. I must say, I do like showering at like 3 o'clock because it's light. You get that shower done just before your evening game drive, and then you can come back home. You showered, you cleaned, and yeah. By the way, that was me having a shower there, and just wanted to show you how well the showers actually work. But yeah, all snacked up once again. Goat cheese, brie, blue cheese, some leftover steak, gin and tonic, and we were ready to go on our 3 o'clock game drive. And there were plenty of tourists around, which is actually really nice to see. I actually love seeing people out and about, all exploring, getting excited over the sightings, and it was nice to meet some of the people exploring this area. There are some kind of river crossings, this one in particular. We seem to drive through this one an awful lot, but we decided to push around this section. I must say, this is the area where we saw that leopard the first day. And so we decided to head back this area. And soon we ended up in this really thick Mopani forest. And there were a few vultures sitting in the trees. And so we really spent some time in this forest, sniffing, getting out our heads out the car and carefully listening. We really thought we were close on something, and so we planned that the next morning we would head to this area again and have a look, because it just felt a little bit liony, and with the vultures we thought there's a good chance that lions were close by. But on our way home we stopped by the hyena den, and our friends were around. I must say, the hyena den was just great. A really great place to spend some quality time. We soon arrived back at camp, made sure that the fire was going in the hot water. I must say, the guys at the campsite are really great, and they always make sure, one, there's plenty of firewood, and two, that hot water geyser is burning 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can have a hot shower at any time. It was time for some steak. Do we get tired of eating steak and potatoes and garlic bread? Not really. It's really quick and easy. But yeah, if you have any ideas of things to cook while on safari that are quick and easy and don't make a lot of mess, please leave a comment. Love to hear about them. But yeah, steak and potatoes is our go-to. After a very windy morning, windy night, we woke up and got that coffee made so that we could have an early start. This was our day to find the lions. I felt that the evening before we had come close to finding them, and so we head out in that direction again, creeping through some really quiet back roads that I had found the evening before. We soon found some buffalo, which I always feel buffalo are a really good indication of lions. Lions do like to follow closely by a buffalo, and so we made our way through these really thick mopane forests, searching for those lions. No sign of them yet, but this beautiful herd of elephants, and the babies are so cute. With the sun just coming up, we soon found ourselves closing in on the vultures again. And it was clear that the lions had been here. There were no tracks, but there were a lot of safari vehicle tracks, which indicated that probably a few days earlier there had been a kill here. But there was nothing left at this time. And although we did meet other safari vehicles, no one seemed very talkative about where the lions could be. And I think this goes to the fact that, by the way, these are some hyena footprints here. There were plenty of hyena prints around. But yeah, going back to the subject, the fact that the safari guides aren't talkative, often is the result of bad safari etiquette around sightings. And so as a result, the safari guides don't want self-drive vehicles around their sightings. And so they are less talkative and helpful when it comes to sharing where there might be sightings. But we were very fortunate that we did meet one old man, and he said there was a lion that had killed a buffalo, and he kind of pointed us in the direction. And I must say, I thought he was trying to trick us, because when I followed his directions, it just led us into really thick sand, long grass, and thick mopane forest. But there was the lion and a buffalo kill, and this was epic. I must say, there you can see the lion in the bush. He didn't stay around long. We arrived, and maybe a minute after our arriving, he walked off into the thick bush. They hadn't eaten any of the buffalo. The buffalo was dead. The lions hadn't started eating, and the big male lion just walked into the bush and disappeared. So we decided to wait out and see if he would come back, which meant making coffee in the car in a rather dangerous manner. But we had this buffalo and this lion kill all to ourselves. We sat here for hours. I think we sat there for about 2 hours, and not another vehicle came. Another thing that didn't come was the lion. That lion did not come back out of the thickets. He seemed very shy. I think it might have been because he was a very young male lion. And I do know in the Khwai area there are two young male lions, and both of them are quite shy. And apparently one of them is quite aggressive. He does get aggressive with vehicles sometimes. But both, if there was other lions around, they didn't come out. The only lion we saw was that male lion that quickly went back into the bushes, and he must have lain down and gone to sleep. But it was still very cool. We sat by that buffalo kill, and we felt good. We were really happy that we had found the lion and we had got to see him. We had finally found the lion. And yes, it wasn't the greatest sighting of a lion, but it was a great buffalo kill, and we had a good time. So at around 11 o'clock, we found our way back to camp to pack up because this was our last day. And so we sat down, packing up and making breakfast kind of simultaneously. Bit of a difficult word, but we set about doing that and packing up. This was it. It had been a great trip to Khwai, I must say. The sightings this trip hadn't been great. We had seen a leopard, we had seen a lion, we had seen a lion kill, but there had been fleeting sightings of the cats. But we will be heading back here again in August, and so I mean it's already August the 6th, and I think we're heading to Khwai towards the end of August. So maybe it'll be a better trip, and we will have better sightings. I really hope so. And of course we'll bring you that video as well. But thanks so much for watching. It really means a lot. All your comments and all your likes and shares and subscriptions. It's amazing the love you've showed on our last video. So thank you so much. Really appreciate that. But yeah, filling up with diesel and heading out back to Maun. It was a really slow journey back to Maun. Because I changed that filter that you saw me change, we had airlocks and all kinds of problems heading back to Maun. But that's another story for another day. But that was it. And once again, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video very soon, because we will be in Khwai in August, and we will be looking for those lions and looking for those wild dogs. That's one thing I really want to find.